I went up on the mountainside to see what I could see, and the vision that was given there I carry on with me. And I could see for miles and miles, and also unto time, and the love and the magic of this earth was yours as well as mine. And all the creatures, large and small, were given all their due, and the fear that once had barred our hearts was replaced with only truth.
This is what hope looks like. This is what love looks like, and it will only grow. The choice you are making today is, what side are you on? I appreciate this opportunity to speak openly to you for the first time. I am here asking that you know me. At the auction, the first person who asked me what I was doing there was Agent Don Love. And I told him very clearly that I was there to stand in the way of an illegitimate auction that threatened my future. I proceeded to answer all his questions openly and honestly, and have done so to this day. I've made my views clear that I agree with the Founding Fathers that juries should be the conscience of the community and a defense against legislative tyranny. I never attempted to taint the jury, as claimed, by sharing any of the relevant facts about the auction in question that the court had decided were off limits. I didn't burst out and tell the jury that I successfully raised the down payment and offered it to the BLM. I didn't let the jury know that the auction was later reversed because it was illegitimate in the first place. To this day, I still think I should have had the right to do so, but disagreement with the law should not be confused with disrespect for the law. I have also made public statements about the value of civil disobedience in bringing the rule of law closer to our shared sense of justice. In fact, I have openly and explicitly called for nonviolent civil disobedience against mountaintop removal coal mining in my state of West Virginia. Mountaintop removal is itself an illegal activity, which has always been in violation of the Clean Water Act, and it is an illegal activity that kills people. A West Virginia state investigation found that Massey Energy had been cited with 62,923 violations of the law in the 10 years preceding the disaster that killed 29 people last year. The investigation also revealed that Massey paid for almost none of those violations because the company provided millions of dollars worth of campaign contributions that elected most of the appeals court judges in the state. When I was growing up in West Virginia, my mother was one of many who pursued every legal avenue for making the coal industry follow the law. She commented at hearings, wrote petitions, and filed lawsuits, and many have continued to do so ever since, to no avail. I actually have great respect for the rule of law because I see what happens when it doesn't exist, as in the case of the fossil fuel industry. Those crimes committed by Massey Energy led not only to the deaths of their own workers, but to deaths of countless local residents, such as Joshua McCormick, who died of kidney cancer at age 22 because he was unlucky enough to live downstream from a coal mine. When a corrupted government is no longer willing to uphold the rule of law, I advocate that citizens step up to that responsibility. This is really the heart of what this case is about. The rule of law is dependent upon a government that is willing to abide by the law. Disrespect for the rule of law begins when the government believes itself and its corporate sponsors to be above the law, claims that the seriousness of my offense was that I obstructed lawful government proceedings. But the auction in question was not a lawful proceeding. A federal judge ruled last year that BLM was in constant violation of this law throughout the Bush administration. In all the proceedings and debates about this auction, no apologist for the government or the BLM has ever tried to claim the BLM followed this law. In both the December 2008 auction and the creation of the resource management plan on which this auction was based, the BLM did not even attempt to follow this law. And this law is not a trivial regulation about crossing T's or dotting I's to make some government accountant's job easier. This law was put into effect to mitigate the impacts of catastrophic climate change and defend a livable future on this planet. This law was about protecting the survival of young generations. That's kind of a big deal. It's a very big deal to me. If the government is going to refuse to step up to the responsibility to defend a livable future, I believe that creates a moral imperative for me and other citizens. My future and the future of everyone I care about is being traded for short-term profits. I take that very personally. Until our leaders take seriously their responsibility to pass on a healthy and just world to the next generation, I will continue. The reality is not that I lack respect for the law. It's that I have greater respect for justice. Where there is a conflict between the law and the higher moral code that we all share, my loyalty is to the higher moral code. The authority of the government exists to the degree that the rule of law reflects the higher moral code throughout history. It has been civil disobedience that has bound them together. This philosophical difference is serious enough that Mr. Huber thinks I should be imprisoned to discourage the spread of this idea. The government's memorandum states, as opposed to preventing this particular defendant from committing further crimes, the sentence should be crafted to afford deterrence to criminal conduct by others. Their concern is not the danger I present, but the danger presented by my ideas and words that might lead others to action. The things I've been publicly saying may indeed be threatening to that power structure. There have been several references to the speech I gave after the conviction. But I've only ever seen half of one sentence of that speech quoted. In the government's report, they actually had to add their own words to that one sentence to make it sound more threatening. The speech was about empowerment. It was about recognizing our interconnectedness rather than viewing ourselves as isolated individuals. The message of the speech was that when people stand together, they no longer have to be exploited by powerful corporations. Alienation is perhaps the most effective tool of control in America, and every reminder of our real connectedness weakens that tool. But the sentencing guidelines don't mention the need to protect corporations or politicians from ideas that threaten their control. The guidelines say, protect the public. The question is whether the public is helped or harmed by my actions. The easiest way to answer that question is with the direct impacts of my action. As the oil executive stated in his testimony, the parcels I didn't bid on averaged $12 per acre, but the ones I did bid on averaged $125. Those are the prices paid for public property to the public trust. The industry admits very openly that they were getting those parcels for an order of magnitude less than what they were worth. The oil company knew they were getting a steal from the American people. More generally, the question of whether civil disobedience is good for the public is a matter of perspective. Civil disobedience is inherently an attempt at change. Those in power, whom Mr. Huber represents, are those for whom the status quo is working. So they always see civil disobedience as a bad thing. The decision you are making today, Your Honor, is what segment of the public you are meant to protect. The majority of the public is exploited by the status quo far more than they are benefited by it. The young are the most obvious group who is exploited and condemned. There is an overwhelming amount of scientific research that reveals that catastrophic consequences which the young will have to deal with over the coming years. But just as real is the exploitation of the communities where fossil fuels are extracted. As a native of West Virginia, I've seen from a young age that the exploitation of fossil fuels has always gone hand in hand with the exploitation of local people. In West Virginia, we've been extracting coal longer than anyone else, and after 150 years of making other people rich, West Virginia is almost dead last among the states in per capita income, education rates, and life expectancy. And it's not an anomaly. The areas with the richest fossil fuel resources, whether coal in West Virginia and Kentucky, or oil in Louisiana and Mississippi, are the areas with the lowest standards of living. In part, this is a necessity of the industry. The only way to convince someone to blow up their backyard or poison their water is to make sure they are so desperate that they have no other option. But it is also the nature of the economic model. Since fossil fuels are a limited resource, whoever controls access to that resource in the beginning gets to set all the terms. They set the terms for their workers, for the local communities, and apparently even the regulatory agencies. A renewable energy economy is a threat to that model. Since no one can control the sun or the wind, the wealth is more likely to flow to whoever does the work of harnessing the energy, and therefore to create a more distributed economic system, which leads to a more distributed political system. It threatens the profits of the handful of corporations for whom the current system works. But our question is, which segment of the public are you tasked with protecting? I am here today because I have chosen to protect the people locked out of the system over the profits of the corporations running the system. I say this not because I want your mercy, but because I want you to join me. The government tries to assume my intentions and then claims. This is consistent with the testimony that Mr. DeChristopher provided at trial, admitting that his intention was to cause financial harm to others with whom he disagreed. The statement claimed by the government never happened. The statement in the government's objection is a complete fiction. The truth is that my intention then, as now, was to expose, embarrass, and hold accountable the oil industry, and to play a role in the wide variety of actions that steer the country toward a clean energy economy. The only loss that I intended to cause was the loss of secrecy by which the government gave away public property for private profit. As I actually stated in the trial, my intent was to shine a light on a corrupt process and get the government to take a second look at how this auction was conducted. I knew that allowing the auction to proceed would mean the permanent loss of lands better suited for other purposes and the permanent loss of a safe climate. The intent was to prevent loss. I believe the important factor is the loss to the public, which I helped prevent. This is a case about the right of citizens to challenge the government. The U.S. Attorney's Office makes clear that their interest is not only to punish me for doing so, but to discourage others from challenging the government, even when the government is acting inappropriately. Their memorandum states, to be sure, a federal prison term here will deter others from entering a path of criminal behavior. The certainty of this statement not only ignores the history of political prisoners, it ignores the severity of the present situation. Those who are inspired to follow my actions are those who understand that we are on a path toward catastrophic consequences of climate change. They know their future, and the future of their loved ones is on the line. And they know we are running out of time to turn things around. The closer we get to that point where it's too late, the less people have to lose by fighting back. The power of the Justice Department is based on its ability to take things away from people. The more the people feel that they have nothing to lose, the more that power begins to shrivel. The people who are committed to a livable future will not be discouraged or intimidated by anything that happens here today. And neither will I. I will continue to confront the system that threatens our future. The people who are committed to a livable future will not be discouraged or intimidated by anything that happens here today. And neither will I. I will continue to confront the system that threatens our future. Democratic institutions give citizens access to power. My future will likely involve civil disobedience. Nothing that happens here today will change that. I don't mean that in any sort of disrespectful way at all, but you don't have that authority. You have authority over my life, but not my principles. Those are mine alone. I want you to join me in standing up for the right and responsibility of citizens to challenge their government. I want you to join me in valuing this country's rich history of nonviolent civil disobedience. This is not going away. At this point of unimaginable threats on the horizon, this is what hope looks like. In these times of a morally bankrupt government that has sold out its principles, this is what patriotism looks like. With countless lives on the line, this is what love looks like, and it will only grow. The choice you are making today is, what side are you on?
Ah, the lands untouched and wild were held sacred and secure, and the wisdom that we gained from all was timeless and endured. Oh, I went up on the mountainside to see what I could see, and the vision that was given there I carry on with me. And the vision that was given there I carry on with me.